Hi guys, my name is Abdul, and in this video I would be explaining about the OSI layer, what each layer task is. Let's get started. So we'll start with the application layer. So what does the application layer do? Let's bring an example, a browser, right? Browser is a software, and that software uh, it rely on the application layer to initiate a communication and to provide access to the lower layer and also to the network. So the application layer does this job, not necessarily that the browser or, for example, Outlook is application layer, but it relies on the application layer to do its job. One of the protocol or couple of the protocol that the application layer would use is FTP, for example, or let's take an example of Telnet, and another one is DNS. So those protocol that I gave example with, um, you would use a software um, when using those protocol, and using the application layer, it will it relies on the application layer to do its job, communicating or initiating communication to the network, and also providing access to the lower layer. So what about the application layer? So application layer have three main function. Uh, First one is data conversion, and the second one is compression, and also data encryption and decryption. These three functions happen at the presentation. So when you're communicating between two different servers, client server, two hosts, you would have a sender and receiver for sure. So at the sender side, the presentation layer is responsible for a conversion of data into transmittable format, right? And when the data is received at the receiver, the presentation layer is responsible for translating the data back from the format, or because originally it had converted the data to transferable format, and then when it received at the receiver, it will have to translate it back, format it, and deliver it to the application layer. Mentioning the format, the one of the generic standard format is ASCII, is one of the standard format that the computer system use. Also, another one for multimedia, it's GIF, for example, or let's say JPG, which is used and which is like a picture format. So these are example of formats. Um, Mentioning the conversion at this, and also what happens sender receiver, the presentation layer also is responsible for the compression, or it's the layer where the compression happens. Sometimes you compress files, large files, into a smaller size file, and that's the compression. Also, what about the encryption and decryption? So encryption and decryption, it does happen at the presentation layer. One protocol of the presentation layer, mentioning the SSL TLS, is a good example. SSL TLS, it's used in, make it prettier. SSL TLS, oh, I messed up the TLS. TSL, sorry. So one of the example, like I said, is SSL TLS, and it's used in HTTPS. SSL TLS, it does encryption and encryption. So when the communication happening. So this is one of the examples to mention. Now going to this session layer, what is its job? Session layer is used to establish, manage, and terminate sessions between end user applications. So maybe someone is making a phone call and voice over IP application. Two users are making a phone call. That phone call have to be, like established, managed, and terminated. All of this would happen at the session layer. Also, it let the system work in half duplex or full duplex. One of the most session layer, like most commonly used in application environment that make use of a remote call procedure, right? Another examples of protocols of session layer is SDP, and also another one is H254. So another thing to add about the session layer, it provides synchronization. Now coming to the transport layer, what does it do? So transport layer, it provide logical communication and flow of data between application processes running on two different hosts. So two common protocols on the transport layer are the reliable connection oriented, which is called TCP, and the connectionless, which is UDP. Also, it have flow control and error control mechanism at the transport layer. I'll be explaining more about the TCP, UDP, and the other protocols in the next coming videos. Now, coming to the network layer, the network layer is responsible for delivering the transport layer data between source and the destination host. One of the common protocols at the network layer is the IP protocol. Also, another one is ICMP. Also, how the path is determined from the source to the destination is determined using routing protocol. So I'll be explaining just in a bit about what the data is called at each of those layers and what headers are added at each of those layers. Now coming to the data link layer, data link layer is responsible for delivering the network data between two adjacent nodes. I'll explain more what that means in a bit, and the difference between data and network layer. Also, it have some error control and flow control mechanism. One of the protocols at the data link layer is ARP. I'll explain also how ARP works in the next videos. And also another protocol, the most common is Ethernet. Now coming to the physical layer, physical layer job is to transmit data over the physical cable. So you would have a sender, right, and a receiver, and there would be a physical media between them. So representation of bits and this physical media is done by the physical layer, and the bit can be represented either in digital way or in analog way. So this all happens at the physical layer. Also, it's responsible for, it handles how the data is encoded and decoded. And one of the common protocol, or one of the protocols used is, for example, let's say USB or Bluetooth. Also, wireless Ethernet, which is 802.11 and the 802.3. As you can see here, the top three layers are software layer, bottom three are hardware. This is the heart of the OSI layer. So in the next part of this video, I will be explaining about more about the addressing in the transport layer, network layer, data link layer, and physical layer, and also mention like a general example of a topology without going through the details of that topology, but just showing how the addresses are done in this topology, and also showing up the encapsulation and decapsulation of the data. Stay tuned, guys.